Welcome. So we're going to start with a little mood setting. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered weak and weary
over a many quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore,
while I nodded, merely napping, suddenly there came a tapping,
as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door.
"'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door.
Only this and nothing more.
All right, thank you all for indulging us. Thank you so much, all. This is an amazing crowd, and I'm so sorry if you are in the hall and you did not get in. Just make sure the doors in the back are open. You are totally welcome to listen from there, and we hope that this sound carries. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Joy Baglio. I'm the founder of Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop, and I'm so happy to be joined by these amazing, speculative, genre-bending, ghostly writers that are on the stage here with me. So we're just so excited for this. If you also found a little brochure, a little bookmark on your seat, that is from a startup that we, Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop, are helping find beta testers, and we're starting to use it. It is an accountability community called Rivia. It's a social media for writers and also an accountability tool for writers to use. So feel free to check that out, see if you want to join it. We're looking for beta testers. They're looking for beta testers. So just wanted to disseminate that. I also want to thank the Lord Baltimore Hotel for inviting us. As you may know, if you did your research before coming to this hotel, it is one of the most haunted, apparently, hotels in the country. Use your own judgment. That may or may not be true. If you are curious, you can, as some of our featured readers have already done, you can take the elevator to the most haunted 19th floor and see what you find. And apparently there is hanging a painting of Molly on that floor, which is the ghost of this hotel that people often see. They don't see her face, they see her dress and shoes. And I'll tell you more at the end of the event about a ghost tour that we are going to be in partnership with Pose Magic Theater, which normally does events here. So I'll tell you more about that at the end. So before I introduce the first reader, I just want to say too how this event came together, which was the conference being in Baltimore, right? And what do you think of, who do you think of when in Baltimore? Poe, right? We all think of Poe. Jen and I wanted to host a haunted reading. We both love a theatrical haunted event. And of course we thought of Poe and Baltimore and the fact that he is connected to Baltimore, but he also died here and under mysterious circumstances. And I'm sure there are many people that know a lot more about this than I do, but the details around his death, go down a rabbit hole and read about Poe's death because it's very mysterious. He was en route from Richmond to Philadelphia and disappeared on the road and was found 5 days later in Ryan's Tavern wearing disheveled clothes that were not his and deliriously muttering, and basically was taken to a hospital where he never regained consciousness, asked for someone named Reynolds repeatedly, and never came to his senses and died. And so the theories, their biographers have written about it, but rabies is one theory, and then another theory is cooping gangs, which was a 19th century form of electoral fraud, that the idea of that basically these gangs would capture people off the street, hold them in like a coop or a cell, basically ply them with alcohol and drugs and beat them, and then dress them in different clothes and send them to polling stations to vote repeatedly for a candidate. So it's thought, one of the theories of his death is that he was a victim of that, which is like absolutely terrifying and horrific. Okay, on that note, I'm really very excited to introduce our first reader. Matthew Lansburgh's collection of linked stories, Outside is the Ocean, won the Iowa Short Fiction Award and was a finalist for the 30th Annual Lambda Literary Award and the Ferro-Grumley Award for LGBTQ Fiction. His fiction has appeared in journals such as One Story, VQR, and New England Review, and has been shortlisted in the Best American Short Stories series and Pushcart Prize series. Matthew received his MFA from NYU and has received fellowships from the Sewanee Writers Conference, the Bread Loaf Conference, MacDowell, and Yaddo. But I just forgot to say, Matthew and other featured authors, do feel free to share your little kernel of ghostly craft wisdom either before or after. Just like whatever you're inspired to do, feel free to. We're all writers. We all are probably hungry for some kernels of craft wisdom. So Matthew.
This is such an incredible turnout, and I am so honored to be here within this incredible lineup. I am going to be reading a couple pages from a novel I've been working on that's called Mr. Conceited. And these pages occur sort of near the beginning of the novel. The protagonist is Stuart. He lives in New York City. He is rushing to meet a boyfriend in the East Village, and he gets hit by a taxi cab. And this is what happens next. People say that when you die, your life flashes before your eyes. But in the moments before he lost consciousness, the only thing Stuart registered was an intense flash of pain on the left side of his body. His hip and his femur, which had been shattered in 13 places. And then, for just a moment, the preternatural feeling of being born into the air, as if he were a child again, and his mother were holding his tiny hands in her own, spinning him around and around, his body almost parallel to the ground, as he screamed out with delight. The next thing he knew, he was standing in line in a bleak cement plaza, the sky above him heavy with lead-gray clouds. To his right rose a squat rectangular structure whose concrete facade was cracked and weathered. Like Dorothy in her gingham pinafore, he found himself trying to figure out where he was. Was he in the Rust Belt or maybe South Jersey? Had he died and gone to heaven or ended up somewhere else? Instead of celestial, this place looked more like something Soviet, pre-perestroika. Large blocks of brutalist buildings lined up one after another, metal benches bolted to the ground, a desolate field stretching into the distance. To his right, 100 feet away, he saw another line of people, mostly elderly, some in hospital gowns and wool caps and house shoes. Nothing in his surroundings suggested he was in heaven. No one had wings or white robes. The person behind him, a stocky woman wearing a turquoise wool coat and a magenta scarf, kept telling him to stop looking so disturbed. "It's not that bad," she chided. "It could have been much worse. My friend Marit Grunweiss ended up in F-19. F-19 makes this place look like the Ritz-Carlton Key Biscayne." Stuart eyed the woman, perplexed. He had no idea what she meant by F-19. He assumed it referred to some region or district or precinct, but that made no sense because why would heaven have precincts? I know, you were expecting harps and halos and fluffy clouds," she continued. "Lots of people think that. You'll get used to it, though. At least we have running water. In F-19, they have to use outhouses. They get their water from a well." The woman introduced herself as Margaret and told him she was from Cincinnati. "Born and raised, that's where I'm buried. I bought the plot with my husband 22 years ago. We prepaid so our kids wouldn't have to worry about where to put us when we kicked the bucket." She gave Stuart a little smile, and for a moment he thought she might be playing some kind of practical joke. "Plus, we wanted to make sure we were close to my parents. We didn't want my sister-in-law getting involved. If we'd left it up to her, I probably would have been cremated. She's a total cheapskate." The woman, Margaret, paused and adjusted the scarf wrapped around her head, and then, as if she thought Stuart might be judging her, she said, "She is. Her whole family's cheap. They wouldn't even pay for their own daughter's wedding. Ron and I had to pay for the whole thing, $13,000, and that was back in '89. You know what I could have done with that money?" Stuart shook his head. He found himself admiring her coat, which had a retro vibe. Was it really possible this was heaven? Nothing about his surroundings seemed otherworldly. I could have gone on some nice cruises to Mazatlan or Puerto Vallarta. All my friends went on cruises. What did I do? I sat home playing Mahjong and watching The Price is Right. According to his watch, it was only 4:30, but Stewart noticed the sky growing darker. He was wearing the same clothes he had on when he died, a North Face parka, navy chinos, and Adidas Ultra Boost sneakers. He wished he had his fleece cap because it was cold enough here wherever he was to see his breath. Look at me, Margaret continued. Why am I telling you all this? You have no interest in hearing my life story. I'll shut up. You're probably just wishing you were standing next to one of the young ladies over there. She gestured in the direction of the line next to them, where several teenagers dressed in some kind of sports uniform stood chatting together animatedly. He decided to keep his mouth shut. Something told him that people here in what could pass for 1950s Warsaw or pre-Ceausescu Romania might not be as open-minded as they were in New York. He was about to turn away from Margaret when she started up again, explaining she'd been in heaven 6.5 years and had never once shown up late for a meal or been written up for an infraction or a lost key. That's why she was in line now, she told him, because she needed a replacement. Whatever you do, don't lose your key. Getting a new one is a pain in the tuchus. He smiled at her, though he wasn't really listening to what she was saying anymore. He was wondering whether he was hallucinating or whether someone had slipped something into the salad he'd had for lunch, a tab of acid or some MDMA mixed into his vinaigrette. He was desperately trying to piece things together to figure out what had happened. He remembered that he'd been on his way to meet Anders for dinner. He remembered putting on his jacket, then getting the call from the scientist at the University of Pittsburgh, whom he'd been trying to reach, then sprinting toward the East Village. He recalled dashing across Broadway and seeing the taxi out of the corner of his eye. The impact, the feel of the car colliding with his body. That was it. Strangely, he wasn't in pain. He kept checking his body, but he didn't feel like he had any broken bones or lacerations or trauma to his face or skull. I'm going to stop there. And Joy had asked us whether we had a sentence or a thought about some kind of craft advice related to writing ghostly or speculative fiction. My sentence of advice is I try to keep things very grounded in specific, tangible, memorable, concrete details. It's something that I really like when I'm reading fiction, especially speculative fiction. And so it might be something that helps other folks also. I'm going to now pass the baton to Jennifer.
Thank you, that was wonderful. It is my honor to introduce GennaRose Nethercott. She's the author of the novel Thistlefoot and a short story collection 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart, winner of the Vermont Book Award for Fiction. Her first book, The Lumberjack's Dove, was selected by Louise Glück as winner of the National Poetry Series, and as a folklorist, she serves as the head writer behind the podcast Lore. Nethercott's work has been dubbed Best of the Year by NPR, The Wall Street Journal, the Washington Independent Review of Books, BookPage, and more. She spends her time touring widely, performing strange tales, sometimes with puppets in tow. She lives in the woodlands of Vermont beside an old cemetery. Please welcome GennaRose Nethercott.
This microphone is exactly the right height for me. Oop, but now it's not on.
Oh, I think
Oh, now I'm screaming.
you just touched it and turned it off. It's okay. There you go.
I just touched it and turned it off. Mystery solved. Okay, so I am going to start by reading a little flash fiction piece from a project that doesn't really exist in the world yet, but it's a collection of invented or surrealist museums with various levels of physical possibility, and this one is called the Illuminarium. The Illuminarium never should have been built. We know that now. At the time of its conception, the Illuminarium's makers were stupid and choked with hope. They were sad, the way all are sad, and so they purchased a former cotton mill on the west side of town, and they got to work. Step 1, black out the windows with vinyl so no precious drop of light can escape. Step 2. Buy up every halogen bulb from here to Rutland County. Step 3. Plug 4 high-powered generators into the old mill's electrical grid. Step 4. Crowd into the mill. Kind of like, bring nothing. When the happiness comes, the true and good happiness, there will be no need for material goods. Step 5, listen from within as, out in the vulgar world, workmen solder every exit shut. Step 6, strip off your clothes. Step 7, turn on the lights. They only wanted to feel the contentment they believed they deserved. Do any of us deserve anything? Only if you believe in an ordered world, an ordered universe, but we digress. They only wanted mirth. They only wanted to banish the darkness. Imagine a life of only light, free of fear, free of shame. Light, light, and only light. Without darkness, there would be no suffering. Without darkness, there could be no death. Holy glow, oh divine brightness, they would live forever. Of course, we know now from the tabloid clippings and the true crime podcasts that the Illuminarists were mistaken. By the end of the first week, bathed in light, light, and only light, they had begun eating their own hair, believing it to be the golden heartstrings of angels. By day 9, they'd tried to carve the black, drunken pupils from their eyes. By the 11th sleepless day, light, light, only light, the Illuminarists were, though undiscovered for another week yet, dead. It was day 18 when an electrical fire began in one of the overworked generators. The warehouse snapped into flames, became a blazing beacon in the dark, a lantern, a star of violence until it burned to ash, and then, only then, with forgiveness, did the blessed shadows come. Thank you. So next I'm going to read from my short story collection, 50 Beats to Break Your Heart, as seen here in my hands. And the titular story in 50 Beasts to Break Your Heart is in the form of like a medieval bestiary, which, there we go. Which for those of you who aren't familiar with the Latin bestiaries, back in the medieval era, monks used to create these encyclopedias, essentially, of all the known animals, except there was a little problem in that these were mostly cloistered monks and had not seen many of these animals, which led to some real zany assumptions, like they thought that goats were so sexy that their blood could melt diamonds. I don't know, man. They were like, that's a fucking sex. You know what I bet that thing could do? Let's chuck a diamond in there and find out. They also thought that hedgehogs had spikes so they could roll in a pile of grapes and then like waddle home and feed the grapes to their children. So I swear, look up illustrations of hedgehogs from the medieval era. They're all covered in grapes. Anyway, I understandably became very obsessed with this form, and I decided to write my own bestiary with all creatures that I made up. And so I'm going to read some of those little freaks for you now. What's really cool about the book itself is that my friend Bobby Detrani illustrated every single one of these beasts as well, so it is worth paging through if you get a chance, which I'll have copies of after. This one's called the Yslani. When a fruit-bearing tree is planted on a grave, a litter of Yslani will grow during the following drought season. In their fetal stages, they resemble plums or dark peaches swelling on the bough. When they grow heavy enough, they drop into the underbrush and uncurl. It will take 5 days for their eyesight to develop, and until then, the Yslani will blindly claw at the soil in search of water. If one digs deep enough to uncover a body, that Yslani will be shunned from the pack. It will sit alone at the foot of the tree, begging for water in a voice that sounds all too much like the voice of the person buried beneath it. Do not give this Yslani water. We repeat, do not give this Yslani water. Walk away. Pretend you do not hear. Della Linea. The Della Linea is best known for its musk, a sweet perfume akin to rosewater met with honey and smoke. Serpentine with a golden headdress, it makes its home in the blackberry thickets, building its nest in the briar. Poachers hunt it with long iron hooks, so they may bottle and stopper the scented oil tucked in the hollow behind its eyes. For those foolish enough to purchase a vial of Della Linea oil in a back alley medicine show, ennui is inevitable. Merely a dab upon the wrists will drive the wearers to abandon their sweethearts and children. They will lock themselves in attics and do nothing but carve strange glyphs onto the walls and refuse all food save for sweet cakes and elder wine. When the perfume is spent, they will scramble for years along esplanades of foreign cities in search of a peddler carrying the perfume. They will never find one. This next one is the Yoon. Yoons were human once. They nursed babies and baked bread and made love beneath the shade of the willow trees. Then they were drowned in a bog on the edge of town. The marshlands kept them flawless, their skin tanned tight as a drum skin, sealing their spirits inside like caged dogs. Snarling against their enclosures, the ghosts grew frantic, then foolish, then sick. By the time the bodies rose out of the silt, they had become something new. Now, there's an urban legend about a Yoon that snuck into a high school party. Some kids were playing spin the bottle in the root cellar, and the Yoon joined in. First, Jackie spun and had to kiss Dale, then Dale kissed Ryan, then Ryan kissed Nadia, then Nadia kissed the Yoon, and when she did, the Yoon's ghost slipped out of its lips and into Nadia's own mouth. It slithered down her windpipe and into her lungs, where it made a new home beside Nadia's own ghost. Now, there aren't many girls with two ghosts in one body. She became quite the local celebrity. Talk shows brought her on to hear her bicker with herself in dead languages she had never been taught, and then they would hand her a small porcelain dish into which she would cough up a mouthful of mud. And I'm going to close with just a quick couple from a story called A Haunted Calendar, I basically wanted to write a tweet-length ghost story for every day in October, back when Twitter was a thing, R.I.P. So these are each under 140 characters or what it was. So I'm just going to read a few from these 31 days. Day 1. When Thomas opens the cabinet, he finds his sister inside. "Where are we, Thomas?" she asks. Thomas takes out a cereal bowl and a box of Cheerios. "Where are we, Thomas?" Thomas closes the cabinet. Day 2. There is a party full of ghosts. They are doing keg stands and smoking Pall Malls on the back porch. One ghost kisses another ghost by the bathroom door. Someone calls the cops on them, but when the cops get there, they only find an empty house. The party goes on all century. Day 10. Ghost, verb. When you think someone is smiling and waving at you, so you wave back, but they're actually waving at someone behind you. And wait, no, they're not smiling, they're yelling, and they're pointing desperately behind you, and they're crying now, and so you turn around and day 11. Did you know that a teardrop is nothing but a small wet ghost? Whenever you cry, an onslaught drips free to wreak Lord knows what mischief. Remember when you wept in front of your beloved and they looked so very frightened? Well, now you know why. Day 19, this is my dumbest one. Fact. Ghosts say boo because Abe Lincoln, the first ghost, tried to call out to his killer, Booth, but was stopped short by death. Day 21. A palm reader works in a nail salon. She reads futures for her customers as she works. One day, she paints the nails of a woman who has no lines on her hands at all. The salon worker quits her job. She moves to Cincinnati. On a kitchen hot plate, she singes her own palms down to blanks. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Jenna. That was incredible. It's my pleasure to introduce my co-host, Jennifer Pullen, our next reader. Jennifer holds a PhD from Ohio University. Her books include Fantasy Fiction, a writer's guide and anthology from Bloomsbury Academic, the first and only comprehensive history of fantasy and craft guide, A Bead of Amber on Her Tongue, winner of the Omnidawn Fabulist Fiction Award, and Beastly, an anthology of shape-shifting fairy tales from Lanternfish Press. You can get it there. It's here on the tables of Lanternfish Press. Her debut novel, Once Upon a Burning World, will be released in 2027 by Meerkat Press. She grew up running wild in the forests of Washington State, but has since been sufficiently domesticated to become an associate professor of creative writing at Ohio University. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you, Joy. Hello, everybody. My inner goth 13-year-old is so happy to be here. So I'm going to read an excerpt from a short story that was recently a finalist for the Calvino Prize, but it doesn't have a home yet, but I'm very attached to it. It's called The Drowned Girls of Camp Godiva, inspired by my sort of angry obsession with the story of Lady Godiva, and also my firm belief that summer camps are one of the scariest places in the world. And it alternates between sections that are about and sort of semi from the point of view of the drowned girls, and then sections from the point of view of varying campers. But I'm going to read two excerpts from two sections from the titular Drowned Girls. And this is the opening. The drowned girls come out of the lake at midnight. One by one they unfurl from the depths, from the silt, from the dying water lilies, from the shadows under rotting logs they unfurl. Once, 100 years ago, a painter tried to capture their rise. He thought they looked like ferns waking in the forest, spirals gradually unwinding. He didn't live to finish the painting, but his thoughts and images still move around in the eddies by the shore. The drowned girls open their mouths, tasting the way he described them, lingering there in the water still. The dabs of the oil paint on his fingers, the primer, the canvas, the blood. They think, yes, we are like ferns. At midnight, they crawl across the lake bottom, hooking their fingers under rocks. Crawdads skitter away, bluegills scatter. As the girls regain some sense of feeling in their limbs, they kick. They push off the bottom of the lake, sending sand and silt flying in a cloud. Long blue-white limbs kick and reach until they break the surface of the water. When the painter first saw them that night 100 years ago, he saw heads crowning above the water like being born or breaking through a mirror, visitors from elsewhere. That first night, they ignored him. Later, he grew too bold with his brushes and his eyes. Now, as then, they swim towards the shore, leaving a wake of V-shaped ripples. They know where they need to go. Some of them use the dock, grasping the ladder, wet hands gripping with unseemly strength. Some of them ignore the dock and walk across the sand, heedless of an abandoned toy or two, a half-buried sand bucket, a shovel, a Batman action figure. They're naked, their bodies pale and hardened like marble or rocks from the moon. They have a fishy gleam. If you touched one, if you dared, your hands would slip in a glimmering layer of slime. The better to escape you, my dear. Their hair hangs in ebony tangles to their waists. Whatever color their hair once was, whatever way their bodies were once shaped, the water has distilled them to a sameness. Bodies a sliver, hands cold, hair a net. They once had names, Sarah, Mary, Natasha, Cassandra, Faith, or Vivian. Those names have dissolved like sugar in the water. Nameless, they stride from the water. The ones that choose the dock, what does this faint hint of individuality mean? Something or nothing. Walk across the wooden boards, their soles leaving wet footprints, but no sound of thudding feet on wood over the water. No sound at all. The rocky pine needles covered hillsides yields to their steady pace. The midnight moon, not quite full, not yet, winks at them as trees partially obscure its gaze. At the crest of the hill, they stop. Before them there is a clearing filled with cabins arranged in artful clusters. And their paws, they don't hold their breath, having no breath to hold, but they do wait, stillness settling into their bodies. An owl whisks across the night sky, its wings as soundless as the girl's. It hoots. The owl's cry shatters the stillness of the night, and as though the owl gave them a signal, the girls move. They move into a clearing and break off into groups of 2 or 3, heading in all the directions of a compass. So some poor little boys are going to be very startled, but you don't get to hear that part. Will 20 drowned girls in the clearing stare down a cabin of teenaged boys? 3 head towards the barn, towards the smell of equine sweat and the sound of swishing tails. The horses, accustomed to incompetent riders and the squeals of the young, sleep passively, one leg cocked, eyes at half-mast. And the cool night air, their horsey breath heats the barn, as does a warmth rising from their large, furry bodies. The drowned girls, each indistinguishable from the other, choose a stall and watch their chosen horse. One horse, a gleaming bay, twitches a flank to dislodge a mosquito. The mosquito soon lands again. The blood-sucking pests ignore the girls, landing on them briefly, but before declaring them bloodless and returning to their equine prey. The girls watch the horses while holding perfectly still, unblinking. One would think the horses would be afraid, since horses are beasts that prefer the flight portion of the fight-flight binary, but they act as though the girls are squirrels or rocks, something constant and uncurious. If the girls hadn't soaked away their memories, water replacing personality, erasing fear, they would know that the horses are right not to be afraid of them. These nameless drowned girls were once disciplines of the equine arts. One loved camp more than anywhere else because of a counselor who could be bribed with pocket money to let her do nothing but ride, skipping all of the regular activities in order to take a roan gelding named Spark into the woods, eating ham sandwiches in clearings, napping in the grass with Spark's reins hooked over a branch. Her parents, investment bankers in the big city, sent her to Camp Godiva for weeks to get her out of the way. But she didn't mind. She liked the quiet, the pine trees, the cool, still water. Most of all, she liked the horses, the way they demanded both everything and nothing, requiring constant vigilance, yet not caring what she saw or how she looked. Sometimes the other kids bullied her, called her a horse lover, made crude jokes. One summer, many years ago, a group of girls, a group she secretly called the Lipstick Sisters for their awful matching hot pink lipstick they wore everywhere, put a nail in Spark's shoe. He bucked and the girl fell off and broke her neck on a stump. The lipstick girls rolled her body down the bank into the lake, and they pledged to never tell anyone as long as they lived. They vowed their secret was a bond to bind them forever. 30 years down the road, they would all end up finding each other's children jobs at prestigious East Coast law firms. So in a way, their vow turned out to be true. But the drowned girl doesn't remember her love for horses, not really. She doesn't remember the Lipstick Sisters. She simply exists and comes out in the nights leading up to the full moon to watch the horses. The drowned girls with her all have similar stories both sad and shocking in their ordinariness. The ways they came to care about the horses in their lives and the ways they came to join the ranks of the drowned girls, all at once unique and not. How they became what they are matters both very much and not at all. They have the peace of the deep, the stillness of water and rocks. And I'll stop there. Thank you, everybody. I suppose we're supposed to share a bit of craft advice, and I would say my favorite thing with spooky stories is when you take an ordinary place and defamiliarize it and make it strange and weird and new. Like that Kelly Link story where the zombies come wandering out of a rift and then just wander aimlessly around a convenience store. It's so unsettling and yet so ordinary at the same time. But now it is my great honor to introduce my co-host, Joy Deva Baglio. She's the founder of the Pioneer Valley Writers Workshop, a literary arts organization offering writing workshops in the literary community based in Northampton, Massachusetts, and virtually. Her short stories are widely published in journals such as One Story, Plowshares, the Missouri Review, the Iowa Review, American Short Fiction, and Tin House, among others. She's received scholarships, fellowships, grants, and residencies from Yaddo, Ragdale, Vermont, and Vermont Studio Center, the Kerouac Project, The Porches, Bread Loaf Writers Conference, and Sewanee Writers Conference, among many others. She lives in Northampton, Massachusetts, where she can be found going on long runs, playing the bagpipes, and searching for interdimensional doorways. Please welcome Joy.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you so much, everyone, again, for being here. So I'm gonna start with my craft thing because it relates to what I'm gonna read. So I was thinking about what a ghost story is and this, what are ghosts really? And I do think that for me, and I guess maybe more widely too, I would define a ghost story as any time you have a character that is trapped, that is stuck in a way where also awareness is lost. So a pattern is repeated, and if you can imagine your worst, most unfortunate part of yourself, like the area you lose yourself the most, and you amplify that, and you imagine, and this could be a writing prompt, you can imagine exaggerating that, you can kind of get the idea of a ghost or some kind of haunted story where does that figure kind of regain a sense of awareness of who they are, what they're doing. So that actually relates to what I'm going to read, which is from a short story of mine called They Could Have Been Yours, and it's in the Missouri Review. It's also reprinted in Apex, and all you have to know, I'm actually going to read from near the end, all you have to know is that the protagonist is a ghost, but she's also living, she's alive, and she has, over the course of the beginning, she has discovered all of her exes, they're all men in this case, but all of her exes getting engaged via social media. She sees all the announcements, and kind of around when this is happening, she also finds a ring that when she puts it on, transports her to the fiancés of her exes who are all getting engaged. And so she goes down this rabbit hole of obsession and stalking of all of these in this case women, and following them around as we lead up to the weddings. And she's disembodied following these people, but her body is alive. She's still very much alive, but she kind of turns into this ghost. So this is towards the end, the weddings are about to happen. When the weddings approach, I'm ready. Although, really, what must I prepare? These are the first weddings I'll attend where my attire matters not, where I won't wrangle some indifferent friend into being my begrudging second, where I'll say and do exactly as I please. The weddings fall in a staggered chronology, consistent with the order in which I learned of them. With the exception of 2, they all take place over the same weekend in May. M and E are married in beachside luxury with suckling pig and 12-layer cake. Others in rustic, hidden charm places, a tall ship in Mystic, Connecticut, a New England castle, a rose garden in Saratoga Springs. J and B have destination weddings on island beaches, others alongside pools with swim-up bars in resorts in Key West and Hawaii, in which I arrive in a single glorious instant, sans airfare and jet lag. Others marry in traditional venues, country clubs, churches, hotel event spaces. I visit them all, flitting back and forth, often arriving just in time for vows and speeches. It's a thrill to see each man, each ghost of my past, paunchy with newly acquired middle-agedness. During their speeches, I relish my non-physicality, my crude laughter, my insults, my ability to spit and shout and curse. I dance, too. On the dance floor, grotesquely, before the bride and groom take the spotlight. Over the chairs and under the altars. On the tables, while the guests are spooning garlic soup and coconut custard and all the richness of the feast into their mouths. But it's not just a raucous affair for me either, not all one big party. One of the weddings eclipses the others, pulls me deeper into the center of what it is I'm already in. Kay's wedding is more understated than the others, not particularly flashy, at his mother's place in New Jersey, where the lawn stretches back to a shallow strip of forest. There are chairs and benches throughout the yard and a carriage house arranged with rows of folding tables and a small space for dancing. It's the end of a long night for me, a night of parties that I sampled in bits and pieces until this party, gradually becomes the only one I care about. the only one I want to see through to the end. I stare around the room, lit with Christmas lights, the fig and nutmeg cake, earlier a tower of iced and sculpted perfection, sags and crumbled ruin. Paper plates sit empty and sodden in front of guests. The bugs are out in murderous, unseen numbers. The last in a train of speeches has just ended, and it's time for Kay to speak. Katrina, his fiancée, is clinking her glass, laughing. He stands, smiling, a few glasses of wine in him, I can tell. He has never been the public performer that I am, never commanded an audience like I have, like I'm leading them into battle. Yet I recognize that something in him has been stripped away, some veil of boyish self-consciousness, and what's left is so striking and alien and newly emerged that I let myself sink to the floor in the center of the room to observe him. Out of all the women to come into my life, he says, and already I am undone. Katrina has risen above them. He continues, describes the moment he first knew it was her, how she was by his side through layoffs and unemployment and surgery, how she built their furniture with him. The deep, gentle strength of her soul, my warrior princess, he says, same as he called me. Even his laugh is the same as when he was mine. There are so many things that are the same and so many things enticingly new that for the briefest moment, I think maybe I am Katrina. Maybe this is all for me. It's my wedding. I'm marrying Kay the way we both wanted, the way it was supposed to be. Thank you all, he says, coming to an end, and I realize he has been speaking this whole time. You have all, in your own way, helped us to find each other. We are eternally grateful. He's staring out into the room of faces, looking right at me, it seems. When he sits down, I float over, hover near them, between them. He leans to kiss her, through me, and I hold my breath, strain to steady myself, but I feel him in every pore of my non-physical being. His thoughts, his smell, his dreams, his fears, the way he laughed at my jokes, all of it condensed into that one space, a concentrated broth of him bathing and submerging and drowning me, trapping me in the old, filling me with such deep longing for the first month I knew him, when he was at the epicenter of everything I found magical and hopeful and beautiful, and the world could have come to apocalyptic ruin around us, and I'd have hardly noticed. Katrina pulls back from the kiss. She's breathing heavily, restless, brushes her neck, like a fly has landed. I can tell she's sensing me. Her focus shifts, her eyes flit nervously, searching, and she whispers something. At first I think it's to him, but then she says it again, almost apologetically, her eyes roving around, perhaps looking for me. Please, she says, go away, go home. What? Kay says, pulling back. Are you talking to me? Then she says it, my name. She's staring at Kay. Do you know someone by that name? He makes a weird face. Yeah, that's my ex. The lawyer, the crazy one. Crazy? Katrina asks. She took the breakup hard, he says. Though that was years ago, grad school. Why? It was not just grad school, I want to say. I am from before and after. I was with him through the applications and interviews, through the apartment hunting and city searching and jobless limbo of afterward. I would know his voice in a crowded room after 20 years across time and space. Is she dead? Katrina asks, her voice low, serious. His face pinches together like the thought is sour. I don't think so. Why? Because I think she's haunting me. And just like that, my secret is out. Kay laughs. I'm assuming she's alive, but, who knows? I haven't heard from her in years. I don't know what gets me more upset. Katrina revealing my secret, or Kay's indifference to my hypothetical death. The part of me leaps with glee that here they are talking about me on their wedding day. Katrina looks up at him. I can't explain exactly how, but I hear her, she says. At first I thought it was something more, bigger, the universe or something, but it's not. It's her. She's here. It's like she's trying to steal my life somehow. Be me. Kay takes a deep breath. She would sabotage us if she could. I wouldn't put it past her. She's jealous, cold, cruel even. He takes a large swig of wine. If she's messing with you, I'll never forgive her. Katrina stares at him. Her eyes narrowed. You know, she says, I don't think that's it. I hear her voice. I feel her. She's not cruel, really. She's sad, desperate. That's what she is. She's empty. Then she smiles with such genuine warmth that I hate her even more. Kay softens. That's why you're so wonderful, he says. You're not like her. And they stare at each other with such tenderness, forgetting me so completely in that moment that something in me shatters, breaks for good. When he leans through me again to embrace her, I don't feel him this time, just my own hollowness, my lack of substance, as if I have fallen out of myself into some vast black hole at the bottom of everything. I start to curse her out, whisper obscenities, call her every name I know she's once been called. But I feel something, tension on my finger, a cinching. The ring is so tight it's strangling me, as though it's around my throat. I can barely breathe, can no longer hear my own voice. Even as I whisper the words, they feel soundless, without meaning. I float away down the long table of guests, across the dance floor that's starting to pulse with bodies, past the festive sparkle of the disco ball, twirling the floor with orbiting colors, and outside the carriage house doors into the yard that's now flickering with tea lights on every small table, like fallen, trapped stars. Somewhere in this very same world is my physical body, paused until my return. Yet here in this garden, I am no more than a ghost. I'll stop there. Thank you so much. So it is my great honor to introduce our next reader. Carmen Maria Machado is the author of the best-selling memoir, In the Dream House, and the award-winning short story collection, Her Body and Other Parties. She has been a finalist for the National Book Award and the winner of the Bard Fiction Prize and Lambda Literary Award for Lesbian Fiction and the National Book Critics Circle John Leonard Prize, among others. Her essays, fiction, and criticism have appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times, Granta, Vogue, This American Life, The Believer, Guernica, and elsewhere. She holds an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop and has been awarded fellowships and residencies from the Guggenheim Foundation, Yaddo, Hedgebrook, and the Malay Colony for the Arts. So happy you're here with us, Carmen. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so I'm going to be reading. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Yes, it's good. I think it's okay. I kicked it, and then it was the whole thing. Okay. I am going to be reading from a story I've never read out loud from before. I'm not sure I'll get through the whole thing, but I will try my best. The story is called The Summer Demon's Account. I have always lived in this patch of wilderness, even before the house was here. I was born in the late spring of a past age when a wolf tore the throat from a doe. In between the trees, scentless and hidden in the dappled light, a fawn watched her mother's body tumble empty to the earth, black blood pulsing into the soil. And that's where I emerged, the intersection of the doe's anguish, the fawn's gaze, and the wolf's hunger. There was need, and there was fear, and there was knowledge, and then suddenly there was me. History happened. A woman came. She was alone. She built the cabin up around me and hung rabbits from the trees, inverting their skins and leaving muscle glinting in the sunlight. When I reached into her, she tasted like lavender and salt and raw meat. Like most, she did not see me, but she sensed me and attributed my presence to the goddess, to whom she spoke with some regularity. If you saw my true face in the moment before you screamed, you would recognize me from some unfathomable depth of a nightmare you do not remember having, but you will never see my face. She came and went, regular as the tide, and from every direction, never along the same path twice, and then one day she did not return. For many years, the house sat empty, except for me. I gambled along the forest floor, chasing only what ran from me. The interior grew thick with dust. A tree began to come through the floorboards, another and another, branches looping out the windows and wreathing the furniture. A fox had 4 kits there, though they would all die before becoming foxes themselves. I did not want them to die, having seen them born and close-eyed and damp with newness, but nature makes her own choices. I grieved, insofar as I can grieve. Occasionally hunters came through, and I was drawn to the warmth of them. I lounged in their campsites and stared back at them from the dying embers. They were uneasy, told stories to each about presences they believed had followed them from their childhoods. A road began to cut itself through the forest. An idle boy who must have lived nearby came through with some regularity, striking at nesting birds and chasing badgers into their burrows. I tasted him, just a little, and he was sweet with a caustic bite, like a poisoned berry. Why did I taste him? Because despite being older than all but the very oldest thing, I had the same curiosity as I had when I first arrived here, and slaking it was my very strongest drive. One day the family arrived. Their arrival was preceded by a crew of men to whom I barely paid attention because their presence felt as transient as the wind. But when they left the cabin, it looked, if not precisely new, then altered for residents. A solar panel sent electricity crackling through the newly laid wires. A dock reached over the lake's edge. The family, a father and mother and a daughter. The daughter had not been born that long ago. She looked like a wedge of soil, dark and thick, and she held tight to a book worn soft from affection. I reached a limb into her, and she garbled bright as a stream, fish scales and light in the water and glinting stones. It seared me. I tasted her parents instead. Her father contained bright, matte confetti, like an explosion of feathers. Her mother was tall inside, redolent of pine. They looked at their daughter like she was the beginning and end of all things. I watched that first summer. Inside the girl, everything churned recklessly. She vibrated with thought. At night, she read by a flashlight. She swam in the lake under her mother's watchful gaze. Her anger, her sadness were flat and uncomplicated things, easy to sense and move like a rock. She held on to them for a while and then left them behind, sitting in the air before they dissolved into nothing. She wrote stories, which she kept hidden in a drawer in her room. She cut up plastic bottles and made them into terrariums, planting seeds from outside in the soil. She watched the night for possums. A bat, dizzy with illness, made its way into the rafters, but I chased it out before it could cause any harm. Around me, the forest chittered. I had never been this active in all of my existence, and now I touched everything. It was a second birth. The fawn in me staggered to its feet. During the day, the girl roamed the forest. I followed her along the path, listening to her talk to herself. She was telling herself a story I could not quite follow, but she mentioned something about a witch and a bird and a boy. She wielded a stick like a sword, whacking at trees, lopping the heads off mushrooms. When she reached the stream, I tried to follow her. In that moment, I became nothing, torn along my seams, scattering like a mercury smash beneath a heavy thing. I drew back from the boundary, which I had never crossed in my long life. Demons seem powerful, but true power comes from movement, from occupation. I watched her wade through the water and disappear into the trees. She returned later with poison ivy and mosquito bites and a story for her parents about finding a half-buried tire. The weather had not quite begun to cool when they left. She waved at the cabin as the car pulled away. I imagined she was waving at me. Each summer, the family returned. The daughter grew taller and taller until she looked closer to deer than dirt. She was joined by no other children. Her dreams grew strange. Her mind blended the forest with the trappings of the house, brought together that which did not belong. Her father's jacket, but knobbled with bark. The trees outside her window scaled with grouse feathers. The dinner table where they sat every night, thick with thorns. She dreamt of them eating there. The thorns slid easily through the meat of their thighs. Her mother's left hand skewered next to her water glass. Every object altered, sadistic, but to her mind and to mine, true. Sometimes the dreams changed. They became wet and bright and glittering. Those dreams I did not understand. She touched herself then, fortified herself against me. In those moments I was ejected from those dreams and from her and wound dizzily through the forest, moving faster and faster, startling the animals, night drunk, laughing. I did not know how to laugh. The final summer, something in the girl had changed. Where before she had been a dizzying amalgamation of pleasure and joy, the moment she entered the house, I sensed something rising inside of her like smoke, or the languorous limb of scent emerging from a freshly killed buck. She became harder to read, more complex, more composed against my intrusion. That evening she left the house with a bowl on her hip, padded to the edge of the dock, and dropped her feet into the water. Oh, the way the light was sharpened by her edges. Oh, her bowl of cherries. It has been an age since, but I still remember the cherries. She chewed the flesh and spit the seeds into the darkness. She seemed alone. More than anything, she seemed alone. A car drove up to the house, growling on the gravel. When the door opened, a young man stepped out. I recognized him, his scent and gait, the boy who I'd once seen crush a robin's egg into the dirt, grown now. He did not seem to mind her stained mouth. He opened the door to his car. It spirited her away from me. After the moon dipped below the horizon, the girl returned. She's hardly a girl anymore, a squirrel chided me, and so I pulled off its tail. When the girl came into her room, her back stiffened slightly like a cat. "Who's there?" she asked. She turned and looked at me, but of course she could not see me, and so she stepped through me and picked up a terrarium on her desk. She turned it on its side, watching the soil and stones tumble down. She reached in and drew out the dried plant by its roots. It had spent the fall dying, where the rain could not reach it. She opened her window and tossed the plant into the darkness. She sat down heavily on the bed and unraveled her long braid. What had happened? What had happened? I tried to gather my experience, but the only image that made sense was from many years before, long before her grandparents were born, when the woman who had built the cabin returned from her walk disheveled and weeping. She removed her clothes and washed herself, and then went out and returned with a rabbit. She killed it quickly and drained its blood, and painted symbols on a wide expanse of wood. When it dried, she tossed pebbles on the board, as if trying to scry some message or impose some action. Magic. But there is no such thing as magic, and so whatever she intended would never come to pass. After the girl crawled into the bed, her parents came to check on her. She wasn't sleeping, not really, but they were a little drunk and laughing softly between themselves, and when they saw their daughter in the dark beneath the covers, they thought her safe. I felt light coming off of them in gentle, pulsing waves. Contentment. They went elsewhere in the house. I could have followed or prowled the darkness, but instead I remained there. I remembered how hard she'd been to take these past few years, how she'd been unyielding as iron. But now, I saw the spaces in her opening and closing like gasping breaths after a run. I slipped in. I wanted to know. I blew out the light bulbs. I inverted the photographs on the wall. I smashed every dish in the cabinet. The girl's mother cried. "What happened?" she said, holding the girl's face in her hands. "Why are you doing this?" "I'm not," the girl said, "but if I hadn't known better, I would have assumed she was lying." "You can talk to us, baby. We're your parents. We love you." Like many things they said, it was both true and untrue. They were her parents. They did love her, but neither of those facts meant anything. Love is not cheap. I cannot love, and so I know its weight, but it is also not everything. After all, the doe loved the fawn and left her. The wolf, too, loved the doe. I did not understand what I did, not exactly, but the wood of the cabin remembered itself. It recalled, as a dying elder dimly recalls a summer afternoon of their youth, the way it used to be. As the branches of the trees that the planks used to be emerged from the walls, reaching inward like fear, reaching outward like a scream. I touched the girl one last time. Truth be told, I tried to hold her hand, but demons cannot do such things. Instead, I dipped below her surface, and she was remembering the first time her mother woke her up in the middle of the night to show her a family of foxes outside the window. The memory thickened, trembled, inverted. It grew spines. It drowned her. 3 days after the family was gone for good, the young man came by. He drove his car up to the house. He stood in front of its demented frame and ran his hand through his hair, looking troubled. I had many choices. I could have pushed a nail into his foot or blinded him with ash. I could have simply waited for him to leave, for it was unlikely that he would have ever returned. But I slipped into him easily. He had holes burrowed deep and crooked into him with things I could not even fathom. Inside, in the instant before I committed to his ending, I saw many things I did not wish to see. I boiled outward, filling every inch of his body until his screams stopped. So now you understand this land's reputation, this house's legend. You understand the impossible shape of it. This is why you trudged through the forest for hours. This is the thing you were hoping to find. For permitting me to unburden myself, I thank you. But when you wake up, and you will, you must. I am sorry to say that you will not remember this story in its particulars. You will simply have a sense that you must leave, that you must run far away and not stop for any mortal thing. Go now. Deer are fast, but you must be even faster. From now on, when you sense the weight of an unseen gaze, spare a thought for the lidless demons of this world who can do nothing but see and see and see. Thank you.
Holy cow. I am so excited to introduce our last reader, Sequoia Nagamatsu. Sequoia Nagamatsu is the author of the New York Times Editor's Choice and national best-selling novel, How High We Go in the Dark, and the story collection, Where We Go When All We Were Is Gone. He has been named a finalist for the Ursula K. Le Guin Award and Locus Award, shortlisted for the Barnes & Noble Discovery Prize, and longlisted for the Penn Hemingway Award, in addition to fellowship support from the Bread Loaf Writers Conference and U.S. Embassy. His short fiction has appeared in publications such as Conjunctions, The Southern Review, Tin House, Iowa Review, and One World, a global anthology of short stories, and has been listed as notable in Best American Non-Required Reading and Best Horror of the Year. He teaches creative writing at St. Olaf College and also serves as a faculty mentor at the Rainier Writing Workshop Low Residency MFA based at Pacific Lutheran University. Please welcome Sequoia.
So let's get another round of applause for these wonderful writers. Just thank you, Joy, for having me. I've been thinking that Matthew and I probably should have shot that Hot Topic before this reading. I feel like a little underdressed. I actually was thinking about wearing like 19th century like an outfit, like breeches or something like that, but like, you know, it doesn't really do short legs any favors. So I want to start off with my, I guess, like sentence or bit of advice. I really liked how Joy talked about this idea of like containment. And I think my advice is somewhat similar, being mindful of the boundaries and rules of your ghost or monster, whether that's teleportation, walking through walls, can your monster speak, have the capacity to understand other species, whatever those rules or boundaries are, be consistent with them and think about how those boundaries amplify the humanity within those monsters and your ghosts or aliens or whatever you're writing, right? I was thinking about what to read here today because I don't really see myself as a ghostly writer necessarily, although I guess by Joy's definition, all of my characters are haunted by grief and moving through their space of immense tragedy. And so How High We Go in the Dark, is certainly kind of, a ghost story of sorts in terms of reimagining ourselves, moving beyond kind of a haunting from this global pandemic. My first short story collection, Where We Go When All We Were Is Gone, does actually have some ghost stories in it, inspired by Japanese folklore. This is my not so elegant way of saying that I have books for sale that I'll sell after the reading. So this is a short story that I'm working on called The Perfect Score. It's something that I'm using as one of the many things that I'm using to cheat on my novel edits all right, and I was thinking about, well, what can I write about that's ghostly oriented? And I was thinking about what haunted me in my life. And that was the SAT. Standardized tests, and particularly the math section. And I could have written about the GRE, but thankfully MFA programs don't give a shit about your math scores, and I was still able to get into them. So, all right, The Perfect Score. We arrive in waves, not all of us, just the seasonal ones who we call by numbers, 1030, 1270, 1400, and poor old 1580. The year-round ghosts mostly keep to themselves, caught in the routines of their deaths. A janitor who died of a heart attack while cleaning toilets. A cheerleader who snapped her neck during homecoming, her face frozen in a mid-panther roar. We are different. We only materialize during the height of test prep season. Summer intensives with nearby Stanford students looking for extra cash. August registration deadlines, October retakes. By late fall, we will begin to thin again into cosmic hibernation. I bloom with the first summer practice packets, my wide-legged corduroys of hope and fear like burning tendrils that we can latch onto in order to really feel. But some of us also want to help those who need it. It gives us a reason to be. 1580 is phasing into her chosen one, her body sinking into the tall blonde like quicksand. The girl shivers and rubs her temples as 1580 makes herself at home, her hands guiding the girl's pencil like a puppet, away from B and toward C, away from A and toward D, in careful little circles. A trickle of blood runs down the girl's nose, but she does not attempt to wipe it. Her wavering hands are still solving, evenly filling out bubbles. 1580, I cry out. I see her head peek out from the girl's like a phantom conjoined twin. Give the poor thing a break. We still have a lot of time left. I've your bust, dipshit, she says. You're always so sure. Look at her. 1580 rises above the girl and points to her shoes. Manolos, she says, and then points to the cherry red Jaguar in the parking lot that the girl rolled up in. She just needs one thing. If her grades or clubs aren't there, this will be enough. Her parents will do the rest. Since dying 5 years ago, I've also been the hand that has guided near perfect scores. I can peer over the shoulders of smarter students to help those I choose. Mostly, though, I encourage breath and pause, my spectral hand steadying theirs, a slight nudge of a finger, a chill through their bodies. Some have gone onto Ivies, 2 have dropped out and started .coms just down the way on Sandhill Road. Most of these students don't need much. Even the rebel Asians who test here, the ones who sag their Calvins and rap in the parking lot, those with frosted tips who say they'll fuck the system, are nimble with fractions and analogies. Does anybody know the value of x for question 13, 980 asks. Square root of 2, one of the older ghosts from the 1950s answers from across the room. And watch out for 16, it's a radioactive decay problem. You need to account for half-life and convert years into months. I'm still roaming the desks, deciding if I want to help anybody, when I see the boy, Benny Leung, with his thick mushroom hair, drawing a Gundam mech robot with masterful detail. Instead of fractions and trig ratios, he shades armor and wing units, equips beam rifles and shields with a steady hand. 5 questions behind most of the other students, and he doesn't seem to care, shading in a bubble on the Scantron before returning to drawing little supernovas emanating from an arm cannon. I hover my hand through his as he creates, not to guide, but to feel infinitesimal pressure, the thousands of electrical impulses coursing through his body like fireworks just to draw a line. When I was alive, I was forced to believe in tests. My family believed in 2 things. 1, that Bay Area public school gangs were just dying to recruit a short Asian kid with glasses and braces. And 2, that there existed a percentile high enough to catapult me into a full scholarship because college brochures drowned in an extreme coupon abyss at our dinner table. I wrote my name in careful block letters. I filled in choice B when I didn't know any better, just like Benny. Sure, I had a final summer of practice, 1280, 1320, 1300. But when the other ghosts call out to me, they call me Darren instead of a number. Because when my grandfather dropped me off for SAT prep, I ran across the street to an internet cafe half the time and logged on to an AOL Instant Messenger account. Popped in a hard disk I kept under my mattress, stories written in libraries and the houses of friends who had computers of their own. The digital creak of an open door. Dark nothing. Did you get a chance to read my short story? Did the family seem believable? Wow, and fluttered. You're the hardest on the aunt, but I don't really understand why. They call me Darren instead of a number because I never took the real test my junior year. I died the week before, bleeding out in an intersection of El Camino Real. Thank you.